What do you do when you are just at the bottom? And to add insult to injury, you're at the bottom because of stupid, sinful choices that you've made. Is there any hope in a situation like that? And the answer is absolutely. And we're going to learn all about that today.
Welcome to Everyday Truth with Kurt Skelly. We believe the Bible is true and relevant to everyone, everywhere, every day. If today's conversation is a help to you, take a moment to leave a review or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening. Now, let's join Kurt for today's episode.
Hey friends, welcome back to our study of the book of Psalms and the first ever, not a postcard, but some socks. Look at that. Those of you that are listening and can't see this, I have some Captain Crunch socks, courtesy of Marcus Bailey, one of our Israel alumnus and one of our alumni. He and his wife saw it, and I do love Captain Crunch. So thank you, Marcus and wife, for your thinking about me. We're in Psalm 3 today, and I love this psalm. This psalm is one of the most refreshing and encouraging psalms in all the Bible. And let me tell you a little bit about the history of it. So it's a Psalm of David, as we read in the introduction. And it was a psalm that David specifically wrote. It was a poem that he wrote at the time that he was being forsaken by, he was being opposed by. The insurrection had already begun from his son Absalom. So remember that David's son Absalom betrayed him and formed a coup and actually took over the capital city of Jerusalem. And David and some others had to flee the city. Ultimately, God vindicated David, and David was able to come back to the city. Of course, you know that Absalom died, and Joab killed him when he got stuck in the tree. You know the story. The point is this. This was a very low point in the life of David. He had sinned with Bathsheba. His son Amnon had raped his daughter Tamar. Absalom, the full brother of Tamar, had vindicated his sister and had killed Amnon. And so, it was just sordid. David had played silent treatment to Absalom. There was bitterness. There was just a horrible, horrible mess in David's family. And now the worst of the worst in that his son has taken up arms against him. What do you do? What do you do in life's worst situations? Especially when you know in your heart of hearts that you have contributed to these bad consequences. You've made bad choices. And much of what you're going through, perhaps even through guilt, you're saying, I deserve this. How do you find encouragement? What do you say to God? Is there any hope? And of course, the answer to that question is yes. And the hope that we find is found right here in Psalm 3. So let's look at it. Psalm 3, a psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. Many there be which say of my soul, there is no help for him in God, Selah. So Selah was a pause in when these psalms were committed to music. Then the Selah was a musical rest. And some believe that the reason why it was inserted is so that whatever was said before the Selah would be something that the singer would meditate upon or think about, let that sink in. So here, David, in the first two wow, I've got to slow down today. Too much caffeine. Here in the first two verses, what David is saying is, man, I have these profound issues and they're growing. There are many people against me. I feel as if I'm a minority. And some are even saying, he's done. He's a has-been. There's no help for him. And I think the idea behind there's no help for him in the Lord is not that the critics of David were saying that God is unable or that God does not have the power to. It's that David has gone beyond God's help. And God is unwilling to help him. David deserves this. He's getting what he deserves. And David is feeling beaten up by the court of public opinion. And sometimes that happens. I mean, think about it. The things in our life that we have done that are dumb and sinful. And sometimes we get this idea that God is done with me and God will never use me again. And they were saying this about David. How depressing. Look at verse number 3. But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me. I can't read that verse without thinking of that great song. I love the version that the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir does, Thou, O Lord. If you've never heard it, just do yourself a favor and Google it and YouTube it, whatever you have to do. It is just powerful. But thou, O Lord, art a shield to me. So a couple things. First of all, David now is speaking directly to God. But thou, O Lord. The prayer, the poem, the song is recording his personal interaction with God. But thou, O Lord, you're that shield to me. You are buffering. You are protecting me from this criticism. You're protecting me from the evil intentions of these enemies. Remember, Ahithophel, his faithful counselor, was now on Absalom's team. Absalom was shaming David in front of all of Israel. Shimei was throwing stones at him. It seemed as if everything was crashing down. Even the Ark of God. David said, don't even bring the Ark of God out of Jerusalem. Let it stay in Jerusalem. If God has mercy, I'll come back and see it. But David was in a low spot. And yet what did David say? But God, you are my shield. You are the one protecting me when there's nobody else, even when my own emotions are accusing me. Look at verse number 3 again. But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory. So my glory is that which I take confidence in, that which is noteworthy about me. And what David is saying is, there's nothing in my behavior that's my glory. I certainly can't look at my past exploits as my glory, because while I might go down memory lane and point at Goliath, and I might go down memory lane and point at some good decisions I made running from Saul, when I go down memory lane, I think about things like Bathsheba, and I think about the big mistakes I've made and the sins I've committed. That's not my glory. No, my glory is the Lord. And that's what every believer can say, by the way. Your glory is not you and your effort or the track record that you have. No, our glory is the Lord. And so, Lord, you're my shield. You're my glory, and you are the lifter up of my head. So when sin does its work in our life, and when that guilt residue seems to stain everything that we are, then sometimes we just maintain that downcast look, that defeated spirit. And what David said is, even in these low places, God, you are my glory. You are my shield, and you lift up my head. And how important it is for us to have a lifted up head, both in the sense that we're looking to God, as David was in verse number 3, and in the sense that God lifts us up. He gives us a renewed encouragement. Look at verse number 4. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill, Selah. That's David did cry, right? Verse number 3. And then as he's writing this, as he's penning this experience, he said, I cried, God heard me. I know that God heard my prayer. He heard me out of his holy hill. So understand that back in Bible days, especially when the tabernacle, at this point, later on the temple, was located in Jerusalem, you would pray toward the temple. You would pray toward Jerusalem. here called the Holy Hill. So the point is that God heard me. Even though David was expelled from Jerusalem, he wasn't expelled from God. And even though he couldn't go to Jerusalem, it was now controlled by Absalom, he could go to God. I think about Daniel, who opened his windows toward Jerusalem. Daniel couldn't go to Jerusalem, but he could go to God, couldn't he? Jonah, the Bible says, prayed toward God's holy hill, prayed toward Jerusalem in the belly of the whale. He couldn't get to Jerusalem, but he could get to God. And aren't you glad that no matter where you are and what you've done, you might not get to a physical location, but by God's grace and through the mediatorship of Jesus Christ, you can get to God. And that's a great encouragement. Look at verse number 5 real quickly. I laid me down and slept. I awaked, for the Lord sustained me. And here's David running from Absalom for his life. Here's David thinking, I might never see my extended family again. I may never see Jerusalem again. And yet, with this shield that God was, with this encouragement that God was giving, with this peace that came through prayer, David was able to lay down in the worst of situations and sleep. I think about the Lord sleeping in the storm. And when we're with the Lord and really acknowledge his presence and his power over the winds and the waves of our situation, we can sleep as well. Sleep is not a matter of a Sealy Posturepedic mattress. Sleep is a matter of a conscience that finds its rest in God. Look at verse number 6. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me round about. See the resolve? So after giving it to the Lord, after finding physical rest, after finding spiritual rest in God, the enemies were the same. The critics were the same. And yet David's attitude was entirely different. I will not be afraid. Even if my problems get worse, even if 10,000s of people come against me, I have learned the secret. The secret is I have my God. He is my shield. He is my encouragement. He hears me. I can sleep and rest upon him. See, the problem made the realization of God's presence that much more poignant in David's life. Maybe that's what your problem's doing for you. Maybe right now, as you're listening to this, you're like overwhelmed by these problems. And maybe some of the problems that you're overwhelmed by, you've contributed to. And maybe there are consequences of even some bad choices you've made. But is your heart right with the Lord today? Is there a spirit of true repentance and humility and desire to be right with God and to know him and then find solace that God is your shield and he's your glory and he lifts up your head and you can have peace. Why? Because of these promises. Look at verse number 7. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for thou hast smitten all mine enemies upon the cheekbone. Thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly. Essentially what David is saying now is, Lord, fight my battle for me. You've done it before. Do it again. Lord, you're still my God. You're still strong. I'm still calling upon you. Lord, you have demonstrated miraculously and powerfully yourself in the past. Now, God, do what you do, and I will rest in you. And then finally, verse number 8, where it says, salvation belongeth unto the Lord. Boy, if there's hope, you're only going to find it in him. If there's an answer to this complex situation, I'm running from Absalom. Remember, at the writing of the psalm, David doesn't know the future. David doesn't know the resolution of this problem, but he knows this. If there is resolution, whatever it is, it's going to be found in God. Why? Because salvation belongs to him. Hope for any kind of answer belongs to him. And so David put all of his eggs in that God basket and said, that's where my faith is going to stay. And then he says, finally, thy blessing is upon thy people, Selah. When you're going through it, it's not just you. Sometimes problems make you focus on yourself and your own hurt and your own loss, but understand that there are people you're leading. There are people that still are following. There are people that look to you for leadership. And so as you pray, as you trust, as you look to God, remember that God has a plan, not just for you, but for those whom God has placed in your sphere of influence as well. And I think that's a great way to look at our problems in a non-selfish way. So I hope that helps. Got through an entire Psalm today, Psalm 3, verses 1 through 8. We'll jump into a brand new one tomorrow. Hope you'll join us for that. God bless you, my friends.